The rain came in hard off the mountains that Tuesday, the kind that makes the Blue Ridge look like the end of the world, all fog and silver and vanishing road. Cole Briggs was inside his shop on Lexington Avenue working on a '68 Triumph Bonneville Hands buried in grease when he heard it. An engine coughing. Then silence. He looked through the front window, the one streaked with rain, and saw her. A woman in a dark jacket standing over a vintage Indian Scout motorcycle. Not panicking. Not on her phone. Just standing there in the downpour, one hand resting on the seat like she was saying goodbye to someone. Cole had seen that look before. He'd worn it himself. He grabbed an old shop rag, pushed the door open, and walked into the rain. Nobody watching from across the street could have guessed what they were seeing. Two strangers, a broken machine, and a storm that had no interest in stopping. But sometimes the smallest door you open turns out to be the one that changes everything. Cole Briggs was 35 years old. He'd run Briggs Custom on Lexington Avenue for 7 years, a restoration shop tucked between a tattoo parlor and Darlene's pie shop, the Blue Hen. The place was small. 2 bays, a back workbench, a loft storage space that leaked every March. But it was clean, and it was his, and his customers knew it. On the wall beside the front window hung 2 things: a framed letter from a veteran in Swannanoa, who wrote that Cole had restored his late father's motorcycle like it remembered how to breathe again. And one photograph Cole at 28, standing in front of a candy apple red Indian chief, his arm around a woman with dark eyes and a laugh that had never been small. Her name was Anna. Anna Briggs died 2 years ago. Ovarian cancer. She was 31 years old. Cole still remembered the last real conversation they had, not the hospital kind with the monitors and the quiet fear, but a real one. They were sitting on the back steps at dusk, Ruby asleep inside, and Anna said, "When you feel ready to let someone in again, don't fight it. You always fight the things you need most." He'd told her she was being dramatic. She'd laughed and said, "I know you, Cole Briggs." After that, he moved through life the way a machine operates after a part goes missing, functional mostly. He got Ruby to school. He opened the shop. He closed the shop. He made dinner. He read Ruby her stories. He went to bed and stared at the ceiling until the exhaustion finally won. During the first few months, he forgot to eat a real meal more times than he could count. He forgot to get a haircut until his neighbor, old Mr. Haas from down the block, stopped him on the sidewalk and handed him $20 without being asked. Cole almost cried over $20. What finally broke through was Ruby. She was 5 then, sitting in the shop eating apple slices, and she looked up at her father with the most serious face a 5-year-old has ever made and said, "Daddy, do you think Mama can hear the motorcycles from heaven? Because I think she'd really like the sound." Cole had gone into the back room and sat on the floor for a while. When he came out, he told Ruby he thought yes, that was probably exactly the kind of sound that made heaven worth staying in. Now Ruby was 7. She did her homework at the back workbench every afternoon, sitting on a rolling stool, her sneakers not quite touching the ground. She narrated everything she was learning, whether Cole was listening or not. "Daddy, did you know horses can sleep standing up? Do you think motorcycles ever wish they could do that?" Cole's regulars were not wealthy people. They were postal workers with 20-year-old Yamahas, college students with beat-up Hondas, retired nurses who'd bought something adventurous and immediately regretted it. He charged what was fair. On the rare occasion someone came in looking like they might cry when he mentioned the cost, he had a habit of suddenly finding a reason to lower it. A discount for loyalty. A coupon he had laying around. Ruby, watching this pattern, once asked him why he kept losing coupons. He said the coupons were very small. He hadn't been on a date since Anna died. His friend Marcus, not related to anyone in this story, just a guy he played pool with, told him he was turning into a monk. Cole said monks didn't have to deal with 7-year-olds asking about horses. Marcus said that wasn't the point. Cole wasn't cold or closed off. He just understood loss well enough to be careful with it. He didn't want to open something in Ruby that another departure would seal shut. He didn't know if his own heart could survive being chosen and then reconsidered, so he kept the door shut not bitterly, just carefully. He had no idea what was about to walk through it. Simone Hartley had been named America's Data Queen by Forbes magazine when she was 29 years old. The article ran with a photograph of her standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling glass wall in the Austin headquarters of Hartley Dynamics, the data intelligence company she'd built from a graduate school thesis into a $3.1 billion enterprise. She was wearing a blazer the color of slate holding a coffee cup, and the headline read, "She sees what the market can't." Her office on the 38th floor had a view of downtown Austin and the hills beyond. The furniture was custom Italian. The art on the walls had been chosen by a curator. Her assistant Priya ran her schedule with terrifying precision, and Simone's calendar had not had an empty Tuesday since the Obama administration. 4 days before she landed in the rain outside Cole's shop, Simone had called off her engagement to Brett Calloway. Brett was from a Houston oil family, fourth-generation, third divorce, second attempt at appearing self-made. He was handsome and polished, and he talked about Simone to other people the way someone talks about a stock they got in early on. At dinner at a restaurant that required a 6-week reservation over food that arrived in portions the size of a silver dollar, he had said genuinely without guile, because Brett Calloway did not know what guile was. "You know what's interesting? The Hartley-Calloway merger isn't just smart financially. It legitimizes both brands. My family's legacy combined with your growth metrics, we become untouchable." He smiled at her like he'd given her a gift. Simone set down her fork. She looked at him for a long moment. "What's my favorite color?" she asked. "What? My favorite color? We've been together for 14 months. What is it?" Brett laughed, adjusting his cufflinks. "Simone, come on. It's burnt orange, like the Texas hill country at sunset. I told you that on our third date sitting on the hood of my truck outside Marfa." She picked up her bag. "Thank you for dinner, Brett." She left the ring on the table next to her water glass. Simone's family had not had money. Her mother cleaned offices in Midland. Her father did handyman work for the ranches outside town. Simone had made it through UT Austin on academic scholarships and part-time work at a diner, surviving on coffee and stubbornness, staying up past 2 in the morning running datasets in an empty computer lab while other students slept. When Hartley Dynamics succeeded, she bought her parents a house in Marfa, $310,000 for 3 bedrooms and a porch that faced the desert. She took them to Italy. She took them to Japan. They were thrilled and slightly overwhelmed and called her every Sunday without fail. But Simone herself had drifted far from the person she used to be. Success had replaced her. Or rather, Simone Hartley, CEO, had replaced Simone, the woman who liked driving with the windows down, who painted badly on Sunday mornings, who once spent an entire weekend reading a single novel and felt absolutely no guilt. That woman had been slowly renovated out of existence, replaced by someone more efficient, more valuable, and completely alone. A week before the rain, she called Priya and said, "Cancel everything for 2 weeks." Priya made a sound like someone being lightly tased. Simone said, "I'm not dying. I just need to disappear for a little while." She bought herself the Indian Scout on her 30th birthday as a promise to take time for herself. She had not kept that promise. She took it out of storage, packed one bag, and headed north on a Thursday morning. She rode through the Texas Panhandle and into New Mexico, then cut up through Colorado, then into the mountains. She left her phone half-charged on purpose. She didn't read the news. She stopped at diners and ordered pie and didn't answer when anyone asked what she did for work. She felt for the first time in years like a person and not a headline. By the time she reached Asheville on a Tuesday, she'd been riding for 4 days. The Blue Ridge Parkway was spectacular in the gray afternoon light, layered ridges disappearing into low clouds. Then the rain came in fast, the way it does in the mountains, as if someone flipped a switch. The Indian Scout died at the intersection of Lexington and Walnut. Simone pulled to the curb and tried to restart it. Nothing. She tried again. Nothing. She stood in the rain hood, pulled up, and realized her phone had been dead since that morning. She'd left it dead on purpose, but standing now in an unfamiliar city in a real downpour, the choice felt less liberating than it had. She looked around the block, a tattoo parlor, a pie shop, and then warm light behind a streaked window. A sign she could barely read through the rain. Briggs Custom. Something about that light. She crossed the street. "What happened to her?" Cole asked, stepping out into the rain with the shop rag still in his hand. He was looking at the bike, not at Simone, which she noticed and liked. "She just died," Simone said. "No warning. She's been a little temperamental on the hills, but how long since she was last serviced? Maybe 18 months. Cole crouched beside the Scout, running his hand along the fuel line. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he stood up still, not making it about the rain, still not making it about her. "Bring her in. Let me take a look." Inside the shop was warm and smelled like motor oil and something woody cedar, maybe. Simone sat in a plastic chair near the front window while Cole worked. She watched him. His hands were certain, unhurried. He worked the way people work when they genuinely love the thing they're doing. She hadn't seen that in a while. "Fuel line's partially blocked," he said after about 12 minutes. "And your carburetor's running dirty, probably the combination of the altitude shift and the moisture. It's fixable tonight if you want." "How much?" $65. Simone paused. "In Austin, that'd cost me $275 minimum." Cole shrugged. "This isn't Austin. I can pay more if—" He stopped and looked at her directly for the first time. His eyes were steady and very dark. "The work is worth $65. Why would I charge you for work I didn't do?" Simone didn't have an answer for that. In her world, price and worth had become the same thing. Overcharging was a signal of quality, not greed. This man had apparently missed the memo. Before she could find something reasonable to say, there were footsteps behind her. She turned. A little girl in rainbow socks stood in the doorway to the back room holding a juice box in one hand and a drawing in the other. She had Cole's eyes, dark, steady, but the rest of her seemed to belong to someone who laughed easily. She looked at Simone with absolutely no shyness. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Simone said. "Are you broken like your motorcycle?" "Ruby." Cole said it gently, but with enough weight that Ruby looked at him and reconsidered. "I mean, are you okay? From the rain? You're really wet." "I'm okay," Simone said. "A little cold. Daddy has extra sweatshirts. He has a lot of them because Darlene next door keeps giving him ones that say the blue hen on them, and he never wears them, but he keeps them because Darlene has feelings." Ruby Stage whispered the last part. Cole put a hand over his eyes. "Ruby, it's true." Simone laughed, a real one, catching her off guard. She couldn't remember the last time that happened. Ruby studied Simone with the frank focus of someone conducting an interview. "What's your name?" "Simone." "I'm Ruby. My daddy is Cole, and he's really good at fixing motorcycles. He says motorcycles are like people. They run best when someone pays attention to them." Cole set down his wrench and looked at his daughter with the kind of expression that was equal parts exasperation and helpless love. "She's right," Simone said. "I should have been paying more attention." The rain wasn't letting up. Cole finished the repair, but the roads off the mountain weren't safe for riding in the dark, and the wet, he said so plainly without pressure, just as information. He offered to let her come back in the morning when everything was dry. And then Ruby, who had apparently been waiting for this opening, suggested that since the spaghetti was almost done, Simone might as well stay for dinner. "Ruby, Daddy made enough for 4. He always makes too much because he learned to cook for Mama and he forgets to make less now." The silence that followed was soft and a little painful. Cole looked at Simone as if to apologize. Simone looked at the little girl who didn't seem to realize she'd said anything heavy. Just the truth stated cleanly the way children do. "I'd love some spaghetti," Simone said. She didn't know sitting at that small kitchen table in the back of a motorcycle shop in Asheville that she was having the most honest evening she'd experienced in years. Ruby talked about school, about wanting to be a marine biologist even though she'd never seen the ocean, about a dream she'd had where her mother taught her to make biscuits. Cole listened more than he talked, refilling glasses, keeping the conversation moving with a kind of gentle competence that made Simone feel held somehow, not performed for. "What do you do?" Ruby asked Simone halfway through her second helping of garlic bread. Simone hesitated. The honest answer felt in this room like wearing a designer dress to a backyard barbecue. "I work with data," she said. "Numbers, patterns and information." Like math? Like math, kind of. But the math tells stories about how people behave. Ruby considered this. "That sounds like being a detective." "A little bit, yeah." Ruby nodded, satisfied. "Daddy says every machine has a story. I think people are like machines. They have stories, too." Cole caught Simone's eye across the table. Something passed between them, not romantic yet just recognition. The feeling of meeting someone who sees the same things you do. She came back the next day. The bike was fine. She'd tested it on a short loop that morning. She came back anyway, saying she wanted to learn basic maintenance. She didn't analyze why. Cole didn't ask. He just handed her a rag. If you want to know what it looks like when a person starts finding themselves again, it looks like this: a billionaire CEO on a rolling stool studying a carburetor like it's the most important thing in the world, while a 7-year-old narrates the entire process from a workbench 5 feet away. Over the next 4 days, Simone learned what makes a clutch cable seize and what makes it sing. She helped Cole prep a vintage Triumph for a vet in Weaverville. She and Ruby drew maps of imaginary countries with elaborate coastlines, and she told Ruby about the real places she'd traveled: New Zealand, the Faroe Islands, a small harbor town in Portugal where the fishing boats were painted every color she'd ever loved. "You've been everywhere," Ruby said, sighing with the complete drama of a person who has not yet been anywhere. "I've been a lot of places," Simone said, "but I was usually working while I was there. I think I missed most of them." "That's sad." "Yeah." Simone said it simply. "It kind of is." Darlene from the Blue Hen brought over 2 slices of chess pie one afternoon and found Simone lying on the mechanic's mat checking Cole's work on a fuel pump, her hair loose, her jacket replaced by one of those Blue Hen sweatshirts Ruby had produced from the back closet. Darlene looked at Cole. Cole looked somewhere else. Darlene went back to her shop and called her sister. "I haven't seen him like this since Anna," she said. "Like what?" "Like he's paying attention to something besides the work." Marcus noticed it too. He came on Thursday evening to watch the game and ended up watching Cole. Instead, the way he angled toward Simone when she talked, the way he laughed at things she said, with the kind of laugh that's not performed. Marcus didn't say anything, but on his way out he patted Cole on the shoulder and said, "Whatever this is, don't wreck it by overthinking." For Simone, the days in Asheville were building something in her that she couldn't name cleanly. It wasn't just attraction, though, that was there: Cole's quiet competence. The care in his hands, the way he talked about Anna without shutting the subject down, like grief was a room you could live in without being a prisoner of it. It was something bigger. She felt like she was breathing differently, like she was taking up the right amount of space again, like her name meant something other than a market cap. But every night alone in the motel 2 blocks from the shop, she stared at the ceiling and felt it, the thing she kept pushing back, the deception she'd allowed by omission. She wasn't just a woman who worked with numbers. She ran a company with 4,000 employees, and somewhere in Austin, Priya was keeping the walls from falling down. Every morning she told herself she'd tell him today. And every morning Ruby would come barreling into the shop with some new discovery: a praying mantis on the back door, a recipe she wanted to try, a question about Portuguese fishing boats, and Simone would look at Cole across the small, honest space of his shop and think, not yet. Just not yet. She would tell him. She just needed a little more time. She didn't get it. Friday afternoon. Simone was helping Ruby with a drawing at the back workbench. a detailed map of the imaginary country they'd been building all week when her phone started. The first call, she let it go. The second. The fifth. The ninth. By the 15th, Ruby was watching her. Simone answered. Simone. Priya's voice came through flat and stripped of its usual efficiency, the tone she used when something was genuinely wrong. I've been trying to reach you since Wednesday. The board called an emergency session. The stock dropped 15% in 3 days because no one can confirm where you are. Media is running with a health scare. Brett called the board directly and offered to step in as interim. Simone's stomach dropped. She hit the speaker off, but Cole had already looked up from the Triumph he was working on. His hands had gone still. The shop was very quiet. Board of Directors, he said. Not a question. His voice was careful and low. Ruby looked between them with the precise awareness children have when adult weather changes. Simone set down her phone. Cole, I need to tell you something. She told him everything. The company, the valuation, Brett, the Forbes article. Why she'd left Austin and why she hadn't said a word about any of it. She said it plainly without dressing it up because he deserved that. Cole listened the whole way through. When she finished, he stood up slowly and put down the wrench. So it was a game, he said. No. Her voice was immediate and certain. It was the opposite of a game. Everything I felt here, everything, it was the most real thing I've felt in years. You lied to me. He said it without fury. That almost made it worse. I didn't tell you the whole truth. I know that's the same thing. You let my daughter love you. His jaw was tight. You let her draw you maps and tell you about her dreams and her mother, and the whole time you had a life you were going back to. How is that different from just leaving from the start? Marcus, she started, then caught herself. Cole, I was afraid. I was afraid you'd look at me the way everyone looks at me, like I'm an asset, like I'm a decision to be made. You never once looked at me like that, and I was terrified of losing it. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. Ruby's eyes were filling up. Why are you fighting? Her voice was small. Cole looked at his daughter and made himself softer the way only parents can do in the middle of falling apart. We're not fighting, baby. Simone has to go home. She has work to get back to. But she said she'd take me to see the ocean. The sentence sat in the room like an object. Sweetheart, Simone said, crouching down. You should get your things, Cole said. His voice was controlled and careful and miles away. Ruby ran into the back room. Simone stood up. The tears she'd been holding back were right there, she could feel them, but she kept her face still. Cole, if I weren't the CEO, if I were just a woman on a motorcycle, but you're not. He turned back to the Triumph. And I can't pretend you are. That's not fair to any of us. Simone picked up her jacket from the chair where she'd draped it 4 days ago. She stopped at the door. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't come here to hurt you. I came here because I was lost, and this was the first place in years where I felt found. Cole didn't answer. She walked out into the cold evening air, got on the Scout, and rode out of Asheville. The Blue Ridge behind her was folding into dark. Her face was wet, and she couldn't entirely blame the wind. Back in Austin, Simone did what she always did when her personal life fell apart. She worked. She sat in the 38th floor office and answered the emails and took the calls and addressed the board with the same crisp fluency that had made her famous. She managed the fallout from her disappearance. She told Brett precisely and without heat that his reaching out to the board during her absence was a trust violation she wouldn't forget. Brett said he'd only been trying to help. Simone said she was sure he believed that. She was fine. She was excellent. She was absolutely not sleeping. Priya noticed 3 days in. You haven't touched the pie I brought from Franklin's. Simone looked at the box on her desk. She'd forgotten it was there. I'll eat it later. You said that yesterday. Simone turned back to her screen. Priya, I'll let it go. A pause. You look like you're grieving something. I'm not. Okay. She was. She thought about Ruby's face when Cole told her to go inside. She thought about the map they'd been drawing the imaginary harbor city with the fishing boats in every color. She thought about Cole's hands going still on the Triumph. She thought about Anna's photograph on the wall and the way Cole looked at it sometimes without stopping work, just a glance, a small nod like a private conversation. She had spent her whole career making decisions by imagining outcomes, running projections, reading patterns. But there was no data set for this. There was just the warm light in the window of a shop on Lexington Avenue and the feeling of being seen without being assessed. And Ruby with her rainbow socks and her praying mantis who had said, "You've been everywhere," with such clean compassion as if she understood what that cost. 3 weeks after Simone left Asheville, she got a call from a number she didn't recognize. Oregon area code no wait, North Carolina. She answered. Simone. The voice was familiar, warm, and a little breathless. This is Darlene, from the Blue Hen next door to Cole's shop. I got your number off the business card you left under the pie plate tip. I'm sorry to call like this. She paused. Something happened to Ruby. The world tilted. What happened? Is she... She was out on her bicycle on Saturday on the Greenway near the river. She hit a root or a rut, we're not exactly sure. She went down hard. Head injury. She's been in a coma since Sunday at Mission Hospital. Darlene's voice cracked. Cole is... He's not okay. He hasn't left the hospital. He won't eat. I bring him food and he looks at it like he's forgotten what it's for. I don't know who else to call. I think he needs someone. I think he needs you. Simone was already standing. Priya. She didn't wait for Priya to respond. Clear everything. Book me the first flight to Asheville, now. On the 2-hour flight, Simone didn't open her laptop. She didn't take any calls. She sat in the window seat and looked at the clouds below and talked to someone who wasn't there. She wasn't sure who exactly, except that it felt like all of them. Ruby with her imaginary harbor. Anna, who had told Cole not to fight the things he needed most. The younger version of herself in that computer lab in Austin surviving on coffee and stubbornness, who had wanted more than anything just to matter to someone. She prayed for Ruby. She prayed for the right words. She prayed she hadn't waited too long. Mission Hospital's 4th floor was the color of institutional beige and soft nightlights. Cole was in the chair beside Ruby's bed. He looked like he'd been there for days, unshaven eyes sunken still in the same flannel he'd been wearing in the photo Darlene had texted. Ruby lay in the bed, small and still, her head bandaged machines, keeping quiet watch. Simone stopped in the doorway. Cole looked up. Whatever he'd been expecting, if he'd been expecting anything, he didn't say. He just looked at her. I came as soon as Darlene called, Simone said. She kept her voice low like the room required it. She walked in and sat down in the other chair. How is she? Swelling on the brain. Cole's voice was scraped clean. The neurosurgeon says she may need a procedure, but my insurance, it covers the basics, not the specialized team. They're talking about transferring her to a general ward. He stopped. His jaw worked for a moment. The general ward doesn't have the right neurology setup. Simone said, okay. She took out her phone. Priya, I need you to authorize a transfer of $620,000 to Mission Hospital in Asheville, North Carolina. Patient account for Ruby Briggs. Request they bring in the best pediatric neurology team available, whatever that costs. Simone. Cole reached for her arm. I can't let you. This isn't for you, Simone said. She looked at him directly, not with pity, not with the confidence of money, just with plain honesty. This is for Ruby. She deserves the best care that exists. You know she does. Cole's face broke. It happened quickly and quietly, the way things break when they've been held together by will alone. He pressed his hand over his mouth. His shoulders dropped. Simone put her hand over his. They sat like that for a long time. "Why did you come back?" he finally asked, voice muffled. "Because I love her," Simone said. "Because I love you. Because I sat in my office in Austin looking out at a city that doesn't know my name, just my net worth, and the only place I could see was your shop on Lexington Avenue." She paused. "I know I lied to you. I know what that cost. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving." Cole looked at her. Really looked the way he looked at machines when he was trying to understand what was actually wrong. Then he turned his hand over and held hers back. Simone did not leave the hospital. For 3 days and 3 nights, she slept in the chair or on a small couch in the family room down the hall. She ate crackers from the vending machine and drank coffee from the nurse's station and told Ruby stories in a low voice about the Faroe Islands and the Portuguese harbor town and the imaginary country they'd been building on that map. She told Ruby about the fishing boats painted burnt orange and blue and gold. She described the harbor at sunset, the way the water goes the color of hammered copper. She talked about the mountains behind the harbor and the roads that wound up through them and what the air smelled like. Cole watched her. He watched her wipe Ruby's face with the gentleness of someone who is not performing care but living it. He watched her hold Ruby's hand and talk to her the way you talk to someone you trust will hear you. He watched her sit by the window at 2 in the morning, head bowed, and he knew she was praying. He thought about what he'd said to her, "You'll fly back and forget everything." He thought about how wrong he'd been. Not about the lying she had lied, and that was real, but about what it meant. She hadn't hidden herself from him to be careless with him. She'd hidden herself to protect something she'd never had. He understood that now that the anger had burned through better than he wanted to admit. On the morning of the 4th day at 7:13 in the morning, Ruby opened her eyes. She looked at the ceiling. Then she turned her head slowly, and she saw Simone. "You came back," she said. Her voice was thin as paper. Simone's eyes filled. She pressed Ruby's hand to her face. "Hey, sweetheart. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Cole, standing at the foot of the bed, covered his face with both hands. His shoulders shook. Ruby looked at her father, then at Simone, then back at her father with the deep, exhausted wisdom of a child who has been somewhere far away and come back. "Daddy," she said, "you're crying." "Yeah," Cole managed. "It's okay," Ruby said. "Happy crying is allowed." 1 month later, Ruby was fully discharged. She went home to the apartment above the shop with a follow-up schedule and strict orders to wear her helmet that she was already planning to negotiate around. Her energy came back fast. Cole said it was alarming, the pediatric neurologist said it was normal, and Ruby said it was just her personality. Simone was still in Asheville. She'd rented a small apartment 3 blocks from Lexington Avenue. She ran Hartley Dynamics from there, video calls, emails, the same decisions. But her feet were no longer planted in a glass tower. She had promoted her COO Marcus Yee to manage day-to-day operations and repositioned herself as strategic chair, which in practice meant she had exchanged a calendar that owned her for a calendar she owned. The difference felt enormous. She took Ruby to school in the mornings. She stopped by the shop after rolling up the sleeves of whichever flannel she'd borrowed from the back closet and helped Cole prep for the day. She'd learned enough by now that she could handle a basic tune-up and diagnose a handful of common problems. Cole stood behind her, sometimes watching, and she could feel him smiling without turning around. "She's better than you were at her level," Ruby told Cole one afternoon very matter-of-factly. She was eating a peach at the workbench. "You know I'm standing right here," Cole said. You were slow." "I was methodical. That's what slow people say." Simone buried her face in an oil rag to hide the laugh. Darlene came over with pie slices most afternoons, now a ritual that had quietly become sacred. She sat at the workbench with Ruby while Cole and Simone worked and told stories about the neighborhood, the regulars, the old days, when the street had 4 music venues and a man named Hector sold tamales off a cart on Fridays. Ruby listened to every word. She had started drawing maps of the real block alongside the imaginary harbor city. One evening in late October, Cole and Simone sat on the back stairs of the shop after Ruby was asleep. The sky was doing that mountain thing, so many stars it looked like the dark had holes in it. "Do you miss it?" Cole asked. "The big version of it. The full-scale thing." Simone thought about it honestly because it deserved that. "I miss the work sometimes," she said. "The problem-solving part. The feeling of understanding a system better than anyone else does. I don't miss the glass cage." She leaned her shoulder against his. "I didn't leave it, though. I just changed the shape of it. The work is still there. It just doesn't own me anymore." Cole looked at the sky. "Anna used to say I was too good at being comfortable in a small life." She meant it as a compliment. He paused. "I think maybe she was also warning me not to be afraid of a bigger one." Simone turned to look at him. "Ruby asked me something last week," Cole said. "She asked if you were going to be her mom." He said it plainly, watching his own hands. "I told her I didn't know. She said she'd been asking her mama in her dreams, and that her mama thought you were, and I quote, exactly right for us. She seemed pretty confident about it." Simone's throat tightened. "What do you think?" Cole looked at her. His eyes were the same dark, steady things they'd been that first night when he'd crouched beside the Indian scout in the rain and asked what happened to her without once looking at her like she was a problem to be managed. "I think Ruby is very rarely wrong," he said. He took her hand, and then slowly, like someone making a decision he was absolutely sure of, he kissed her. Not urgent, not dramatic, just certain the way you are when you've stopped fighting the thing you need most. In February, on a Saturday morning when the Blue Ridge was dusted with its first light snow, Cole Briggs and Simone Hartley got married in the shop on Lexington Avenue. Darlene made the wedding cake 3 layers chess pie filling, which was Ruby's specific requirement. The decorations were string lights and winter wildflowers that Ruby and her friend Cora had gathered on Friday afternoon. The guests were 22 people regulars. Neighbors, a couple from the shop, 3 blocks down, Cole's friend Marcus and his wife Simone's parents, who'd driven up from Marfa in a truck that needed a new alternator, which Cole diagnosed in the parking lot. There were no reporters, no press release. Priya knew and had agreed to guard the news with her life. Simone's parents sat in the front row. Her mother held a handkerchief the entire ceremony. Her father, a man of few words who had spent his life fixing other people's things with steady hands and honest prices, looked at Cole for a long moment after the ceremony and said, "You remind me of me." Cole said he'd take that. Ruby wore a cream dress with mud on the hem from the flower-gathering expedition. She carried a small bouquet of dried orange mountain flowers and walked down the aisle with tremendous solemnity until she was directly in front of Simone, at which point she whispered loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear, "You look really good. I picked those flowers myself." In her vows, Simone said, "I spent most of my adult life believing that the measure of a person was what they built. The bigger the thing, the more it proved. And then I walked into a shop on a rainy Tuesday, and a 7-year-old told me that motorcycles need to be loved to run well, and I realized I had been operating a very long time on empty. You and Ruby didn't teach me to be less ambitious. You taught me that the best thing I could possibly build was a life I actually wanted to be in. I'm not here because I gave something up. I'm here because I finally chose something real." Cole didn't have notes. He looked at Simone and said, "Anna told me not to fight the things I needed most. I fought this one pretty hard for a minute." A few people laughed. Ruby made a sound of agreement. "I'm done fighting. You're my family and I will love you as long as I've got." Ruby loudly approved. The Indian scout stood in the corner of the shop, cleaned and running smooth. Beside it was Ruby's bicycle new helmet hanging from the handlebar. Beside that was Cole's old pickup truck, which technically needed a new gasket, but would get around to it eventually. 3 vehicles, 3 people, 1 family. The week after the wedding, Simone's phone rang with news about a 9-figure acquisition offer for Hartley Dynamics. Priya read her the numbers. Simone looked out the window. Ruby was in the shop below helping Cole with an old Kawasaki, explaining something to him with the intense focus of someone who has done extensive research and wants you to know it. "Tell them I'll have Marcus respond by end of week," Simone said. "That's it. That's it." She went downstairs. Ruby handed her a torque wrench. Cole raised an eyebrow. She kissed him on the cheek and got to work. Sometimes the thing you've been building your whole life turns out to be a door. And all the work, the sleepless nights, the relentless drive, the cost of getting there turns out to be not the destination, but the reason you were ready to walk through it when it finally opened. Real love doesn't ask you to prove yourself. It asks you to show up, to stay, to choose it again every morning when you could choose something easier. Cole Briggs chose it. Simone Hartley chose it. Ruby, who had probably understood this the longest, accepted both their choices with great patience and only a small amount of smugness. The Indian Scout ran perfectly. Simone took it out on Sunday mornings on the Blue Ridge early enough that the road was still mist-covered and the light came sideways through the trees. Sometimes Cole followed on the Triumph. Sometimes Ruby was in the truck working on a drawing in the passenger seat, narrating the landscape to herself. The cold open on that rainy Tuesday, a woman standing over a dead motorcycle, a man walking into the rain, that was not the beginning of anything either of them had planned. But that's usually how the important things start. Not with a strategy or a schedule or a Forbes profile. With a door opening and someone deciding to step through it. If this story found you at the right moment, share it with someone who needs it.